What's good, my fellow peasants?
For Fantasy Rebirth, I wasn't going to be covering this. We've had 3, as you guys have probably seen, notes from the developers, questions and answers. Has got the internet booging on the booging train, and with it being this close to 16, I really didn't expect Square Enix to steal the thunder of 16. Not that it necessarily has to. I mean, it could supplement and support it, but I want to quickly go through these and also what I think is going to be coming at Summer Games Fest, because hell man, we are, what, 3 days? It's on Thursday, 4 days away from Summer Games Fest. Very big showing, a lot of developers showing up, Square Enix are there, and yeah, there's no coincidence they're releasing this stuff. Convinced we're going to be seeing it at Summer Games Fest. Otherwise, this would just be peculiar. Had a third note. It's happening. So the first one that we saw was simply Square Enix saying that they're working on nailing down a release date. I had so many people messaging, "Pets, have you seen? It's massive." And when I looked at it, honestly, nothing burger. Nothing burger. I mean, that is just a Square Enix classic, El Clasico. A please be excited, just with different words. It kind of ticked me off. Maybe I've just got really spoiled and cynical in my old age. I mean, I'm turning 31 this month. Why does the flower of youth blossom only to wither and decay? I was going to have an existential breakdown this month, regardless of 16 coming out, which, you know, I'm hoping that it's dark and gritty enough they just pushes me over the cliff. But you drop a juicy 7 remake trail on me as well. Oh my, this is gonna be a good month if they do it. And yeah, so I may be getting cynical in my old age, because back in the day, if I'd have seen, like we had with the 7 Rebirth first preview, you know, if I'd have seen something like that back in the day, I would have lost my mind. But of course, we've had 7 Remake. We've seen the AAA HD character models for Sephiroth and Cloud. So that first little preview of them just in Nibelheim, I ain't gonna lie, guys, I was a little bit disappointed. I was a little bit underwhelmed. Like, it was a cool shot, but at the end of the day, it was just like, well, that's a thing that I knew was going to be a thing. So I felt very much blue-balled on that, and this first developer note just saying that they're nailing down a release date, not even that it's winter within this year or whether it's going to be later that year, because it runs all the way up to March. So seeing everyone lose their mind over that first one, I was like, damn, guys, like, we down bad. We down bad. When do we get this excited from Square Enix just throwing us little please be excited still? But then we had developer comment number 2. Now, this one gave me a mix of feelings, man. It's the players will be able to journey across the wide and multifaceted world with a high degree of freedom, experience a myriad of different stories. Now, for this next part, of course, we know that 7 Remake is a trilogy, and it's blowing my mind, and it still is. And I don't think people quite realise the format of OG, and that Midgar it's less than 12% of the story. So that means we've got a massive chunk of story, arcs, environments, locations to go through. Like, we're going to have to go through at a breakneck speed over the next 2 parts. And, you know, it kind of makes sense that they contained it just to Midgar so that they could build all the assets. Again, the first part is building everything from the ground up. And that once you have that skeleton there, the dev, they're going to be able to build upon that much, much quicker. But that still means that logistically, we're going to go probably all the way up to Aerith's death in part 2. That is, you take what's remaining of the story, that's the next kind of halfway point. And for some people to call me out and say, Pez, we ain't going all the way up to Aerith's death, man. Like, honestly, I think we're just going to go up to Junon. Junon, bro! Are you kidding me? Or just up to the Golden Saucer section? That just doesn't make sense in the chronology of the timeline. Now, of course, the timeline has been broken, both metaphorically and literally by Sephiroth breaking destiny. So not only do we have, in my opinion, and what my main wants are, to hit all the beats, and Square Enix had said this, that we're going to hit all the beats of the original story, but now they've got this whole expanse of like extra juice to let loose, you know, other things that they've opened up in the story, you know, things like Zack, for example. Zack can't just go back to being just a little flash at the end of the remake like he was in OG. teed up that secret ending, like him busting into the church, like all the mourning people, the deadpan music, the scan up on his face, the Aerith, the Terrier timeline, the Beagle timeline, and then just even all the other stuff that they're going to build upon that. Like, for example, Lucretia, she didn't get any kind of arc in the OG, really. I really want to see Lucretia come back or have some kind of evolved out story. Because at the end of the day, man, when you can sit there and give a whole section to a guy called Leslie down in the sewers with his freaking girlfriend, you got to do that. You got to give some screen time to the Kids Are Alright characters. The Kids Are Alright being like a short story written by Nojima, I think it was, pretty sure it was. The characters like Kyrie and Mirel, was it? Mirrell, Beryl. Even the introduction of them, for me at least, tees up that Evan Townsend, half-brother of Rufus Shinra and director Lazard, a very significant character. He really builds upon the failed clones, the identities of them, the names. One of them is his mother, how that relates to President Shinra, who was having children with scientists who worked on fetal experiments in Nibelheim. Fetal experiments! Round about the time frame that they went and discovered Genova and the Knowles Pole, which is where the Cetra are, got a fauna, looked at her DNA under microscope, found it's perfect. And they moved Rufus Shinra's age back to that point, so that it corresponded perfectly with that time frame in history, meaning I highly think that Rufus Shinra is a product of biological experimentation. You've heard me say this before. I think President Shinra wanted a perfect son. So all kind of like arcs and little tease up like that, there's a lot to cover, man. So to see that develop in a myriad of different stories, I like this. The problematic, or at least it's only problematic in how fans are receiving it, it's the high degree of freedom. This does not mean open world. Number of articles and posts I've seen saying FF7 remake devs into open world. Nah, man, no, absolutely not. I was gonna say, man, this game will not be open world. If I'm wrong on that, if they actually do go that route, I will eat a shoe on camera. Hear me now, quote me later, because that would be Square Enix achieving next to the impossible. They could cover all of the original beats. Of course, in those original beats, these extra elements, they're going to include them into them. So like going to Kongaga would be a perfect section to explore Zack's thing in a bit more detail. If he is in the live stream still or on some other timeline, whatever it is. So I do think it's going to weave. And I think it's going to weave subtly. I think the main thing I suspect they're going to do is similar to the first part. Things are weaving with a few little like mysteries, a little bit of what's going on, and then right at the end, that's when it really blows out of proportion. Maybe they'll keep it on that kind of elusive, kind of more seductive thread tonality, as to not disturb too much the original's essence. I do think that that's a very tricky line to walk, because I do worry that we're going to go into the next part and the crew's just going to have amnesia. Well, we're just going to continue on our journey. That whole thing that just sort of happened with Sephiroth floating in Midgar, freaking trains being thrown everywhere. They don't address it that much, which I do think will happen to some degree. But me personally, I don't want the crew to have amnesia from going through the portal. How that reconciles with Yuffie, who didn't go through Destiny's portal, when Sid Highwing comes in. I think Vincent, being that he's connected to Chaos, he could have intimate knowledge of everything kind of regardless. Like, Vincent has a literal entire structure of plot that would allow him to be privy to a lot of stuff. And of course, Kate Sith. But I think regardless, we're going to know that the second we flash to Calm and Cloud starts telling the story when they're in the hotel, I think we're going to be able to tell the direction Square Enix are taking. And maybe we're going to see this at Summer Games Fest. Something that's going to give us some idea of the direction. Are Square Enix doubling and tripling down? Do you think they're going to? Still there's a lot of fans who are not that happy that Square Enix have kind of bust open the doors of Destiny and they still want that faithful 1-for-1. But regardless, when you take all of that, like just the reality of where the 7 Remake is at, and you think that they're going to be able to do all of that and do it in an open world environment when Square Enix, quite literally, I mean, have you played 15? Have you not seen the folding of Luminous Studio? The open world is not in their wheelhouse. I'd say this is a general statement for open world games, is that they're extremely intensive, they lean more into the gameplay experience, and it's exceptionally difficult. Like, that's where most of the resource and the focus goes. So it's extremely difficult to have a very depthy, fleshed out story. I mean, that's what happened with 15. Characterization and story and arcs got sacrificed because the open world was just simply too intensive. It took too much of the screen time. And, you know, I just don't know where people think Square Enix are going to produce this capacity to do a massive open world, and why they're interpreting a high degree of freedom as that. Personally, I think it's just going to be akin to what 16's going to be. You know, Yoshi P said, the story that they are telling in that, across loads of different environments and across loads of different arcs, that if they did it open world, it would take the dev time up to like 15 years, 2 decades, something like that. That applies with 7 Remake as well, honestly. It could even be a similar format to, say, Lightning Returns. Now, I know that's an old-ass game, and it did have limited environments, kind of like 3 or 4 like core segmentos. And I think that segmenting is what they could kind of do with 7 Remake, because we have like distinct continents in this. You know, you have the Midgar continent, and you have kind of the more Wutai one. You go to the northern continent, the crater, the forest, the ancient city, yada yada yada, and those are just basically big, huge, massive, wide open areas, and that within that we can have a tremendous amount of freedoms, because I do want to be able to go off the beaten track, explore things, you know, quirky things like, you know, chocobo breeding and going to the Knights of the Round Island. And I think it is very important that 7 Rebirth has that to some degree, to encapsulate that essence of exploration that was really, really key to OG when you went out of Midgar. Another part of that is going to be mini games, man. We're going to the Golden Saucer, and I know for a fact we all want to get on a motorbike. I want to do some boxing, I want to do some basketball shots. Fort Condor, I mean, they introduced that into episode Yuffie, so they've already built that. So all you need to do is just repurpose that, maybe evolve on it a little bit, because that's actually pretty fun. And this, I think, is the more realistic expectation for 7 Rebirth, more so than open world. And you know how that translates when we get the airship. I don't think we're gonna get the airship at this phase. We will get the tiny Bronco, and I don't think we're gonna fly around. My honest expectation is that, and this is where the PS5 with its next to seamless loading times can really utilize a trick to give us the same feeling of open world. And it's very easy to trick fans into thinking something is open world. People to this day still say FF7 OG is open world, and that's why Rebirth and this remake has to be. FF7 OG was not open world, man. It was an overworld map that you could traverse, and then obviously the towns and cities you instanced into, and it really wouldn't be that hard for Square Enix to do something like that. I mean, with Final Fantasy 10-2, for example, or 10, I'm saying, map, you give an overworld aspect, and then you would go and you would just click the location. Now, it's not hard to just then take that same kind of like high detailed map, exactly like they've done in FF16, a high detailed overworld map, but make it even more detailed. Blow the scale up a little bit, and give us a little airship that we can control. And then when we drop onto a certain continent, bam, little loading time, you know what I'm saying? There we are, we're in. That's honestly what I think Square Enix might do, could do, and would give the illusion of open world and freedom. But that being true open world and all the dev hell that comes with that, all the sacrifice and the cuts, that honestly would happen. And this is just where it never ceases to blow my mind, seeing the number of people who are like, oh, we're all confirmed. It's like, fans' expectations are honestly through the roof, beyond the reality of what is capable. I mean, this has just been the story of 7 Remake from the beginning. That's why I started this channel, when I saw people saying FF7 absolutely has to be a single player game. I'm looking at it, I'm like, yo, bro, that's a text-based D-scale game. You blow that up, the voice acting, you blow up the scale so it's realistic. You know, Cloud is like 1/30th the size of the entire city. This was never fitting within the confines of a 40-hour game, a 50-hour, 60-hour, and like how many people believed it would, could, and needed to, and it was purely Square Enix greed not making that happen. Wild. Crazy, man. Anyway, those are my thoughts on that question. Now, this third one that's just come out 5 hours ago at the point of recording this. What are some of the key things to look forward to in the Rebirth story? Nojima says, chain of narrative developments that lie at the very heart of the 7 story while discovering each character's destiny. That coming from Nojima, who is by far the most far out there like story writer of the Square Enix stuff. I personally love Nojima's work. I love how down the rabbit hole he goes, how much he takes an idea that is already crazy enough and then just batting cages it into the stratosphere and make the other Square stuff have to work around him. I like that aspect to him. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Same with like the 10-3 stuff. I like it. In its just Nojima format, which is whenever we read these mangas or these novellas, that's when people get a lot of criticism because they're like, this stuff is just too wild. But once you put that into a team environment, a dev team, where you've got Nomura and you've got Katase and was it Hamaguchi? Yeah, Hamaguchi got moved over to Division 1, one of the directors on the project. And he's even kind of a bit like Nojima. He's young, fresh blood, but he's kind of just as crazy. So crazy, in fact, that it was his idea about bringing Sephiroth and all the crazy stuff at the end of the remake, and it was Nomura who was like, yo guys, like we may need to chill out, bros. We may need to chill. Everyone was blaming how crazy the 7 remake part 1 went on Nomura. It wasn't him. Nomura is actually the sane one on the project, which I never thought I would say that. So yeah, I really think that at least it implies some hint, now that the characters have broken out of the mold of the story that they were on, what I believe was Sephiroth reopening the live stream, but now changing their fates, so in turn he can change his own. The temptations to deviate and undo some things that are supposed to happen, whether that's like with Zack's death, whether that's with Aerith, Cloud saving Aerith. I've said it, I like them to go even further. And this is what I'm going to talk about, what kind of trailer I think we're going to get next. I think it's going to be one of two things. It's either going to be a light-hearted, quipsy, quirky, really fun and uplifting kind of trailer, or it's going to be totally the opposite. It's going to be very angst, it's going to be very dark, because there's 2 tones for the next part. There's the Nightmare Begins, the going to the mansion, the really gritty sort of backstory that leads to around that, Tifa losing her father, Nibelheim village getting burnt down, Nanaki discovering the truth of his father and mourning over that, things with Dean. Oh my god, if we see Dean in the next trailer, that for me, I'll be confident. Honestly, it's Dean. For some reason it's Dean. It's always been Dean. Dine. Dine. It's him. I have the biggest fears of being cut, where it's kind of like the more grounded backstories of the characters get kind of lost in this crazy, nutty, much more high fantasy, I would argue, elements, with the inclusion of Destiny and things like plot ghosts, the Whispers. They're much more high fantasy and they're much more nutso butso, grandiose in terms of what's happening. And I think that's what a lot of fans have had a complaint with. I think that was the big one with the Whispers, where it's just like this much different sort of tonality, like swooping in, like literally swooping in, and taking more of the sincere, heartfelt simplicity that the OG also was able to encapsulate. I think it was that balance that made for this like beautiful, unique, legendary experience, like the campfire in Cosmo Canyon. The characters just talking about their past and their hopes and their dreams and their self-reflections on things. So that's one whole tone. So I could see the trailer, if we do get it at Summer's Game Fest, focusing more on that. I think the trailer is going to open on the Golden Saucer Man. That's going to be the opening shot. Fireworks. You're going to have Aerith with some sort of melancholy, introspective kind of dialogue happening. I think it will then go to like Tifa as well, having very introspective dialogue. And then we start seeing little flashes of all the other characters, like backstories. I know even just like the village that's like run down, the Fisherman's Village. I'm thinking of the one beneath Junon. It's all messed up and somber vibe. That then transitions maybe to something darker. Mr. Dolphin, Golden Saucer Games, Dion just waddling through the trailer with his speedos, Hojo down at the beach, chatting up some ladies, Chocobo racing, chasing Kate Sear through the Golden Saucer, Eleanor being a donut, I know, Rena and Rude drinking in the bar, Wutai. So many light-hearted moments that the next trailer could be, and I kind of suspect it might go that way. This is what I personally think. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Somber, angsty, or light-hearted and fun, because some of the games does kind of have that more uplifted vibe. I think it would be in Square's mind a perfect time to have more Costa del Sol vibes, honestly, rather than, you know, Temple of the Ancients getting crushed and Zack just being thrown deeper into pits of despair, just like kick the puppy. Cloud, there's Village Burn throwing Sephiroth, which I even wonder about, like, will the retelling of the Nibelheim story, I hope it's slightly different, slightly changed, because again, this game is all about memories, and I think that now Sephiroth has quite literally more control, or you could even argue all control over memory. The fact that he absorbed all the whispers, which were souls, which was livestream Terror Corrupt, memory itself. Now this could get really psychedelic, psychological. The levels of mind, and that very much could be with each character's destiny, what lies at the heart of it. Sephiroth trying to manipulate that, influence that. I've already said it before in my previous theories. I think we've seen the groundwork of that manipulation happening, you know, placing a clone, Marco, in Tifa's care to assess her, to understand her better, to not make the same mistake of underestimating Tifa, you know, thinking that Aerith was the big threat and going for her, which, you know, backfired, activated Holy. Sephiroth is, the thing with him is he's fully aware of the previous events, and so he has a massive leg up, and how he changes all of that. Anyway guys, those are my thoughts, my feelings that came up when I saw these 3 questions. Really wasn't expecting to be doing my own remake before 16 comes out. In the next 2.5 weeks, we should be getting, honestly, a trailer, a demo, should I say, in anywhere from the next 3 to 4 days, which, yeah, being as that coincides exactly with Summer Games Fest, I think if we don't get 7 Rebirth, definitely get 16. It will announce the demo for sure. I reckon it will be one of those, it's live now or live by the end of the show, or honestly both. And I did poll you guys. What is poll at? Right here. Let's see the results. Yeah, follow me over on Twitter at FFPeasants, Fantasy Peasant, to see my occasional weird tweets that I make. And yeah, I have 135 votes so far. Almost 50% of you think, yeah, 7 minutes gonna be there. 20% are saying just 16. 12% of you cynical mofos says neither, and 20% of you think both will come. Well, we will see, guys. I will be streaming it live, so be sure to subscribe, hit the bell button, make sure you got notifications switched on. We are feasting well, my Final Fantasy Peas. Times are good. These next 6 months are gonna be juicy. Until the next video, Kubo!